Quiet! Quiet, kids! Hey, let the feasting begin. Unless you keep quiet, we can't even have it. Will you please shut up? Shut up. Please be quiet. Shut up. Shut up. We'll just stand here until you're quiet. Hey, please. Question, would you be quiet, please?
Please sing something.
No! Sorry.
Next question.
No, we need money first.
How much money do you expect to take out of this country?
Nothing. Half a crown, $10.
Sorry, I can't
Depends on the tax.
How was your trip home?
Fine, very nice. A bit bumpy over Alaska, though.
Have you ever seen a reception like this in any of the...
Marvellous. We never had anything like it before. Fantastic.
No, it's the best ever we've ever had.
I don't think so. Not quite like this one. Nice to be here. Nice to be here, great. It's a lot of good time.
Knowing when they can tell us what they think they have.
We can't tell you. Wish we knew. No idea. Good press agent.
The question here. Go ahead now. Thank you.
Tell Murray to Kay to cut that crap out.
Cut that crap out! Hey, Murray! Is that a question? Yeah.
Does all that hair help you sing?
What?
Does all that hair help you sing?
Definitely, yeah.
You feel like Samson, if you lost your hair, you'd lose what you have? It?
I don't know.
There's a question here. How many are bald if you have to wear those wigs?
All of us.
I'm bald. You bald? Oh, we're all bald. Don't tell anyone, please.
I'm deaf and dumb, too.
You're dead from a man.
You're only a bear.
Please. Quiet, please.
Over television away from me, drop the Beatles down the table, please.
Scene one, take one.
Julius Kokowski or Kokowski here.
The reporter.
She represents the teenage...
Well, look at that camera they got. Fantastic. Take a look at that and take a look what I got. Damn it.
Big enough. He's running the whole thing.
Of Hamilton.
What do you want, Ben Hur? We got it.
Capitol Records.
First of all, John, how's your throat?
It's not so bad. You know, it's getting better.
What do you mean it's not so bad? It's getting better.
Well, it was lousy the other day. I could hardly speak, but I had a couple of jabs here and there, and it's getting a bit better.
Ringo, you're pretty popular in Toronto.
Thank you very much.
Do you like Toronto? Or have you seen very much?
Well, what I've seen of it's okay.
What have you seen of it so far?
Hotel and driving, yeah.
How was that drive-in from the airport
Very
last
good.
night?
One of the best, actually.
What do you mean by one of the best?
Well, it was well organised with the police,
Yeah, but you had a rough time coming through that King Edward Hotel lobby.
Oh, that
last
was
night.
a bit rough, but it was okay,
I understand you lost a tie clip.
No, I didn't. Someone made that up. I didn't even have a tie on.
There's a young lady back here a little while ago asking me how often you chaps wash your hair.
Once a week, twice, any time. It's like when we get a cut, there's no set time.
Paul, yes. I think your name is Paul, right?
Yes.
Paul, you are a favorite in Toronto. I think it's your good. No, I think it's your good looks that go along with it.
Gee.
I'll get to you yet, sir. Paul, what do you think of Toronto? I mean, what you've seen of it so far?
Well, like Ringo says, we haven't seen a lot of it, but it's nice. We just saw a little bit, Who's hitting me?
Go ahead.
John. Saw a few lights from the air, you couldn't really tell. Sounds good, though. Nice.
What about these people out here? I mean, you saw
marvelous. Yeah, the audience is fantastic.
Are the teenagers of Toronto any different from the teenagers that you met all across the continent?
No, they're all just as good. They're all great.
Well, we kind of think they're better.
Okay.
All right. Does everyone
now let me get to your friend over here. Oh, he's already busy. That's how I'll get you later. Okay. Now, where do you go from here?
Where do we go from here? We go to Jacksonville.
Jacksonville, where? Florida?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I thought you had a trip to Montreal somewhere in between.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Montreal, then Jacksonville. I thought you meant up to Canada.
Now, your first trip to Canada wasn't to Vancouver,
What's
right?
the wire? I don't know what's happening here. Excuse us. People
your first trip into Canada was to Vancouver.
Yes.
What did you think of Vancouver?
the same. You know, we don't see much of it. We can't really tell you what the city's like, but the people are nice.
Well, I get the impression that you champs are virtually prisoners in your own right.
Only when we're on tour. When we're not working, nobody knows where we are half the time.
You don't go anywhere. You don't do anything.
Well, we've come here to work, haven't we? We're on tour. When the tour's over, we've got 2 weeks off, and we can go out and do what we like.
How do you feel about this personally? I mean, if I was in London, England, or if I was in Europe someplace, I'd like to go out and see something. I mean, you chaps don't get a chance to see anything.
If you were there to work, you wouldn't be. We came over here to do a tour and work. We'd not come here to sightsee or see buildings or the local.
Well, what about this press conference right now? Is this sheer work? I mean, there's no pleasure involved.
It's a job, we have a laugh.
It's pleasure.
I haven't had a chance to talk to you very much.
No, you missed me, didn't you? Yeah.
I didn't miss you at all. You were there, but you were talking to somebody else. You were busy. I wasn't.
Yeah. Okay, go on.
Now, what is your impression of Canada?
It's very nice, yeah. I like it.
Now, when you are finished, touring around the country as a Beatle, have you given any thoughts to perhaps using a few of those shekels that you've earned to come back and perhaps see some of the cities that you've been in?
Yeah, probably. But, we haven't made any plans so far. We'll wait until that happens and then we'll start arranging what we're going to do.
Now, any group that gets together, 4 or 5 champs, 4 in your case, that gets together, over a period of time, there are a few,
knocks.
Knobby ends here and knobby ends there.
Yeah,
well,
we have slight
together.
ones, but, we've known each other so long, we know how to get on with each other.
How long have you known each other?
I've known Paul and John about 8 or 9 years. Us three have been, known each other that long. We've known Ringo about 4. So, we know.
Where'd you start?
That's why we're at school. We
go back in Liverpool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when I say where did you start, I mean how did you start as well? I mean,
well, we bought guitars and got together.
Pity you don't get a chance to see the place, George.
It is.
Look, if you're going to talk, will you talk out in front of my camera? I can see you too.
Okay, I'm just asking George. Pity you don't get out.
It is.
And see the bricks and that.
Pity you don't too.
Well, I don't mind it. How do you feel?
I don't mind either. I'm having a good time.
Now, I've got one more question. Where do the hairdos come from? Where's the original?
Scalp. We just found them,
Sorry, we've got to go now, folks.
See you.
Thank you very, very much.
John. Paul. Harold. George.
Just on the left, just on the left, John.
Well, George.
Yeah, follow here.
Round to the left.
On the left. This way?
No, John. Whoa, sorry, come back. Here. Yes.
Well, my name is Eric. Good to meet you. Hello, Eric. Welcome to Japan. Well, I'll be the MC for your show at, I have a few questions here. You have a good sleep?
Yes, fine.
Did you have any knowledge about Japan before coming? A little.
Yes, a little bit, not much though.
Not
About
much.
as much as we know about most places we go to.
I see. Well, how the Japanese fans?
Great. Seem
Great.
very great, yeah. We get lots of letters from Japan.
Oh, but you didn't meet them at the airport?
Not many.
No,
We couldn't see a thing
we
for the
came
television lights.
It's amazing security. I've never seen so many people guarding it.
And so we don't want you to be hurt or anything,
No.
so we're trying our best.
But we don't want the security to hurt the fans, Don't get too rough with them.
And I understand you met your queen. And how was what was the impression?
Oh, she's okay.
Very good.
Yes, one of the best.
How did you feel when you received the medal?
That was nice.
Tired. It was early in the morning. Oh, about 10 o'clock.
Oh, you had to get up. You hate to get up.
We don't like to get up too early. Because we don't go to bed till late.
And what musician and composer do you respect most?
No, I don't know really. John Lennon.
And Paul's marriage. The big
Yes.
question.
It's not true.
It's not true.
It's wrong. It's George's marriage.
George's marriage.
These three are married.
How many times do you wash your hair in a week?
About once.
Once in a week.
It depends,
Depends how hot it is, how dirty it gets.
Depends what
You
you're
cut
doing.
them often? About
That's
once
the
a year.
same, whenever you feel like this. You don't do it every week, you don't do it every month, it just happens.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you go. Now what do we do?
So now say goodbye.
As all of us on our show like the Beatles so much, they're really four very well-mannered youngsters, and I think that's what American youngsters recognize in them. And now, I'm going to take you right now to London, where the Beatles made their first United Artists motion picture, A Hard Day's Night. I want you to meet them again, and then after the interview, I want you to hear them sing. Now, how long are you going to be over in our country? When are you coming over?
30 days. We're going over about the 13th, I think. The 13th of August. Yeah. Whenever the film starts, it opens in New York, and we're going to be there then. And we're in San Francisco, I think, on the 19th. So it'll be early in August for 30 days.
Then you're going to do a tour of about 25 American cities?
Yeah. 25 in 30 days.
I was reading in the papers here on the way over, there was a dispatch from Australia, and they said that when are you going out to Australia?
June, the 9th of June.
9th of June. They said there that they're going to close the airport. The airport will be closed to all youngsters.
We're not getting them.
Taking it. Well, I'll be looking forward to greeting you again in our country.
Thanks.
In the meantime, it's been so very, very nice seeing all of you here, and do you want to
see you again? Yeah, it's great to see you, Ed.
Because over and over again, in all of the correspondence and all of the comments through the country, the unanimous opinion of all who saw you was you were four thoroughly nice youngsters.
Oh, thank you.
And I think that is actually the basis of your tremendous popularity. Often I see you back home.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Thanks a lot. Give our regards to everyone over there.
Fine.
How do you like to be remembered, as a guitarist-strumming Beatle or as a writer, as a satirist?
I don't mind whether I'm remembered or not, honest. Yeah.
Where do you draw your inspiration from? Do you, for instance, draw inspiration for satire from things that happen around you when you're a Beatle, some of the absurd things, for instance, the Lord Mayor's reception and so on?
Well, I wouldn't use the whole thing like the Lord Mayor's reception, but I could use one or two things that people at that would say, or just somebody the way they looked. If somebody looked a bit funny to me, well, I could imagine them only not there, somewhere else, and write about them in a completely different situation.
Well, do you meet the kind of people you'd like to meet?
Occasionally.
Always.
You don't always. Of course you don't. Well, you don't, do you? No, but I mean, we occasionally do. We've got friends of ours, and so friends are the people you like to meet. Works, isn't it? So, we meet our friends. Sounds a bit daft, we meet our friends, but, that's true. We do get to meet the people we want to meet. And we meet people on tours like this that we like, and we get to know them. If there's anyone we especially like, we'll always sort of make arrangements to see them again, sort of thing. There's always ways of getting to know people you like. I mean, we're not protected to that extent.
And how important is your drawing to you, your artwork? You wanted to be at one stage an artist.
Yes, but as usual, I wanted to be the wrong one. I wanted to be a painter, which I was lousy at. The only thing I could do was this kind of work. But I insisted on taking painting.
Some of these drawings look as if you're preoccupied with abnormalities.
Well, I'm not really. It's just that they're not very abnormal.
Physical abnormalities.
Yeah, well, my earlier drawings when I was about 18 and 19 were really abnormal, you see. So I think they're quite normal. They might look abnormal now, but they're not. They're quite clean and fresh, I thought. Healthy people.
Very clean and fresh spirit of scepticism in all this. Are you naturally sceptical of things and of people and situations?
Probably, yeah.
Do you think people have a tendency to underestimate you, to think that you're barely articulate and that you don't have a mind because you're a Beatle?
They might have, yeah, I think they did for quite a time, but now they expect more. I mean, some press conferences, they'll just come in and sit down and wait for us to be witty about nothing, But they won't even talk sometimes. They think we're going to give a show. So it's not all roses.
Is this why you play around a lot in your press conferences?
Well, no, we play around a lot. If there's just nothing happening, you know, we just mutter to ourselves. But it's usually the best playing around is when there's some good people there asking questions, you know. But if there isn't, what can you do? You know, sitting there waiting for you to entertain them, and you can't, you know, because we can only work if we've got sort of straight man, as we call them. And somebody's got to ask us something for us to say anything sort of a bit funny. You can't just go in and sort of, well, I'm in the room.
How much are you protected, actually? I mean, what are you doing tonight?
Well, probably nothing, but I just don't want to do anything tonight. If I wanted to do anything, what is there to do? You know, go out to the pictures or something, which I don't fancy anyway. You know, but that's the thing. I don't really want to do anything now. Somebody asked me if I wanted to go sightseeing, but I can see quite a lot from me from this window.
Where are the Beatles? Well, somebody's given us an idea and he's working on the script. And if the script's nice, then we may do it.
One question we like in Hollywood, we'd like to know how you compare movie working to, say, the concert tour or recording sessions. Amount of work and stuff like that.
Well, we don't compare it much, you know.
Would you rather play the Hollywood Bowl again than Dodger Stadium?
We don't really mind.
One of your countrymen was here yesterday or the day before he returned to England, or on his arrival in England. He said he thought American women were out of style for not wearing miniskirts, and that because they didn't wear miniskirts, their legs were ugly. I'd like to ask you what you think about American women's legs.
Well, if they don't wear miniskirts, how does he know their legs are ugly?
You know, on your album cover that was banned, whose idea was it? And
the photographers that took it.
And what was was there any meaning behind it?
This religious issue is answered once and for all. Would you clarify and repeat the answer that you gave in Chicago?
I can't repeat it again because I don't know what I said, you know.
Well, would you clarify the remarks that were attributed to you?
You tell me what you think I meant, and I'll tell you whether I agree or...
Concerning the remark that you made comparing the relative popularity of the Beatles with Jesus Christ, and that the Beatles were more popular. This created quite a controversy and a furor in this country, as you are obviously aware.
Do you know that, John? You created it.
Now, would you clarify the remark?
Well, I've clarified it about 800 times, you know. I could have said TV or something else, you know, and that's as clear as it can be. I just used Beatles because I know about them a bit more than TV. I could have said any number of things.
No, not really. It's a happy place, that's all. You know, it was just, we were trying to write a children's song. That was the basic idea, and there's nothing more to be read into it than there is in the lyrics of, you know, any children's song. Sparky, you know, it's the same kind of thing. Sparky.
Maybe one of us said that, but I didn't.
It was me. Well, I mean, you know about that anyway, you know. I mean, we could say a thing about, like John's religious thing in England, and it wouldn't be taken up and misinterpreted quite as much as it tends to get here a bit. You know, I mean, you know it does, but it was...
to say it again and again.
Whip it up a bit. The thing is, I think, you know, you can say things like that in England, and people will listen a bit more than they do in America, because in America somebody will take it up and use it completely against you, and not have many scruples about doing that. And I don't know. You know, I'm probably putting my foot in it saying that, but...
You'll be explaining the next
Yeah, I know. Oh well, it's just wonderful here. Well, I don't know. The thing is, you know, do you expect us just to go on forever, you know, making more and more money, making more and more figures, bigger and bigger? You can't just go on forever.
If certain people have decided they don't like the statement, then, you know, we'd rather people who like us and really like us rather than pretend to like us because of the in thing.
2 more Cokes.
Sorry? Probably
Not,
did. A
you
bit.
know, first house Memphis, 200 didn't turn up that were meant to, or something like that. Second house was Wild, you know. We thought that would be the place that would sort of show any sort of real doubt about what was going on.
The thing is, it doesn't...
Sorry, Johnny.
Sorry,
Johnny.
matter though, because the only thing that we've ever based our success on, compared with other people who are doing the same thing, and compared with other people who have recently done the same thing as we've done, this tour has outsold their tours. So, you know, I mean, yeah, we're unsuccessful, you know. I don't believe it.
I haven't learned to play the sitar. I mean, Ravi Shankar hasn't learned to play, and he's been playing it 35 years.
Well, when we feel like that, we take a fat holiday on our fat wallets. You get fed up of that and you feel like coming out and doing this.
Thanks, honey. No, that's not true, you know. But thanks all the same.
No comment. It's an opinion. It's all, you know. I don't, you know, they're entitled to their opinion.
I think the thing about that is that there are more people. Well, you know, but I mean, you hear more from American bigots than you do from Russian bigots. I just bought that farm because it was very cheap, and I always wanted a farm. And it's a nice place, but you know, that's as far as it goes. You know, does it?
The good news is that George Harrison is healthy and happy. The bad news is that he's healthy and happy without John, Paul, or Ringo.
2, 3, 4.
Before this dance is through, I think I love you too. I'm so happy when you dance with me.
You remember these young men. 12 years later, it seems they made those hard days' nights more than a little easier to take. But 12 years later, they're out on their own, men in their 30s now. And the long hair that raised havoc in 1964 seems close-cropped and oh so boyish today. Still, their music made a generation free, a generation that waits for the promise of good day sunshine from Beatles together or apart. Today at a press luncheon, George Harrison unveiled a new song, a new album, and a brand new record company. This song, called This Song, was written in reaction to a copyright suit against Harrison. But this song, the lyric goes, is a simple song. It don't infringe anybody's copyright. No, this is not the somber, magical, mystical George we used to know. The music is happy. George is happy, but happy enough for a Beatles reunion? That's a question I had to ask.
You know, we've all leading our own lives. It's been 8 years, really. And I don't think an ad in the paper is going to do the trick. We have to want it personally ourselves, and not just to make $50 million or whatever the figure may be. We must do it because we want to be together as people first, and secondly, to be together for the music, and then everything else would fall into place. But at the moment, everybody is doing their own lives, and it feels to me a bit like saying, please go back to school. You know, that was like our apprenticeship. Yeah.
Harrison on his own feels he's starting a new career, making happy music, working now with Warner Brothers for him a brand new record company.
It gave me new sort of energy, new hope. You know, just the whole idea of a new deal, a new situation, new people, more incentive, you know, more energy, input from other people, because the old record company, you know, they just took us for granted.
How can you take George Harrison for granted?
It's quite easy. Like this.
Harrison's single is just out and already on the charts. His album will be out soon, and from the pieces I've heard, it's beautiful. But what delighted me most today was I found out George Harrison is 6 months older than I am. Roger?
No comment. Hoping your news is good news, I'm Roger Grimsby.
Of classical music, and I never wanted to listen to it because it was Beethoven and Tchaikovsky and sort of big words like that, and Schoenberg. You know, I always thought... I mean, something like a taxi driver the other day had some sheet music of a Mozart thing. And I said, what's that, you know? And he said, oh, that's the high-class stuff. You won't like that. He said, no, you won't like that. And I said, well, what is it, you know? He said, oh, no, you won't like it. You know, it's high-class, that. It's very high-class, highbrow. And that kind of way, I always used to think of it. I used to think, well, you know, that's very clever, all that stuff. And it isn't, you know, it's just exactly what's going on in pop at the moment. Pop music is the classical music of now. People just take our music and, you know, in a line, and we just sort of say, yeah, she was just 17. And they read everything into that, you know. She was a 17-year-old nymphomaniac working on the streets of Broadway. But, you know, what we meant is she's just 17. But it might mean all the other as well. I don't know, you know. I've no idea if there's any Aeolian cadences and, you know, miasmic climaxes and all of that. I mean, we're the last people to know about our songs, because the pop world's never heard the pop world as such. Because we can't, you know, it's like if you look at a snapshot of yourself, you're looking at what tie you were wearing, or whether you were looking nice in the snapshot. You know, but anyone else would just take the snapshot and say, oh, that's good, that's a snapshot of Tony, you know. It's nice. We really just always think of ourselves as just happy little songwriters, just little rockers, you know, just playing in a rock group. But it gets more important than that after you've been over to America and you've sort of got knighted. And when we were touring, and when it was at a sort of peak of hysteria, instead of just thinking, oh, that's nice, I mean, we could have just thought, aha, click, you know, let's use this, and for evil, you know. But there's no desire in any of our heads to sort of take over the world, you know. That was Hitler, that's what he wanted to do. There is, however, a desire to get power in order to use it for good. If you've got power, you've got to use it for the good. Because like everyone else, we read the papers, we go through all the things that most people go through. So if everyone wants to say a thing at a certain time, it's handy being a songwriter. You know, you can put your finger on it, like a yellow submarine. You know, that was lucky, though.
The possibility of his having to leave the United States, and at that time his attorney, Mr. Leon Wilds, will join us to make certain that John or I make no mistakes in the legalities. But I welcome you here, and I'm glad that you're here. As I said at the outset, back in 1964, after the cataclysmic arrival of the Beatles here in the United States and the great popularity you had on the Ed Sullivan program and others, there were many people who did not really understand what you were doing, and they thought then that your hair was long and that you looked modish, you know, and you were revolutionary. Does it surprise you at all that it took so many of us such a long time to get into your act and to realize what you were doing?
No, it was mainly parents, and they were against rock and roll, you know. Anyway, before the Beatles came along, I mean, people have been trying to stamp out rock and roll since it started.
Why do you think that is? What are they afraid of?
I always thought it was because it came from black music, and the words had a lot of double entendre in the early days. And it was sort of, you know, the white kids, our white, nice wasps are going to go crazy with all this moving their bodies. You know, and the music got to your body, and the Beatles just carried it a bit further, made it a little more white even than Elvis did, because we were English, you know. And people couldn't hear it. That's why they didn't understand it.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. You know, one could never understand the words until one sat down with the record album. I went to a couple of your personal appearances, including one in, I think, in Philadelphia in 1965 in an outdoor location.
Oh, yeah.
And there was so much screaming and so much carrying on. And did that bother you at all when you were doing those concerts? That people couldn't hear your music, that all they heard was themselves screaming?
It got a little boring. I mean, it was great when it first happened. When you'd come on, there'd just be nothing but wah, you know. But then we just became like lip-syncing, you know, miming. And sometimes things would break down and nobody'd know.
And so it wasn't doing the music any good, you know?
When you guys were in the dressing rooms after these concerts, or when you were in the dressing room after the Ed Sullivan Show, where, my heavens, young people were just almost flinging themselves on stage, didn't you ever wonder, are these people crazy? Are we that good? Can we really produce this kind of reaction in people?
We didn't think whether we're that good or not. You've got to think you're good to do what we did, you know? It was like being in the eye of a hurricane, and so there was never a time when you thought, what's going on? And that was about as deep as it got. What is happening? Or what, you know, you'd suddenly wake up in the middle of a concert or a happening, and think, what, how did I get here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I remember was playing music in a club, and the next minute this. But we never thought about it too much, because it was an ongoing thing. It was happening to us, and it was hard to see, you know. We were just in the middle, being ushered from room to room.
As I recall, there were fan clubs or clubs of followers formed for each of the individuals in the organization.
Well, it was mainly a Beatles club, but, you know, they sort of fanned it out a little just to keep the...
And I'm just wondering how unified any group can be, and I'm not singling out the group that you belong to, the Beatles, but how unified can any group be when the audience has certain favorites? Maybe they like Paul more than they like John, or something like that. And I wonder, I got right to it, didn't I? Yeah. I just wondered if it's awfully difficult to be friends, and do you really care about whether or not you're friends when you are a group such as the Beatles, or whether you're the Rolling Stones or whoever?
We didn't break up because we weren't friends. We just broke up out of sheer boredom, you know. And boredom creates tension.
How can you get bored doing what you did?
Because it was going on, it was not going anywhere, you know. We'd stop touring, and we'd just sort of say, time to make an album, you know, go in the studio, and the same four of us would be looking at each other and playing the same licks.
And those silly haircuts, yeah.
Those silly haircuts that you have now. You see, notice he's got his now. And we were very good friends, and we'd known each other since we were 15, you know, and we got over all the actual fighting. The real nitty-gritty, dirty, you know, stuff, which had nothing to do with how popular we were. The same popularity, meaning Paul was always more popular than the rest of us, was going down in the dance halls in Liverpool, so it didn't come as any big surprise, you know. I mean, the kids saw him, the girls would go, ooh, ooh, you know, right away. So we knew where the score was there. But it was a group, it was the music that was interesting, that was important, not who was, you know, as long as we were, you know, going forward and going somewhere, it didn't matter.
But all of a sudden there just wasn't any further progress. It was the same old over and over again.
Yeah, it just got like a marriage that doesn't work or something.
Now, there are some groups that are quite open in their advocacy in the music that they present. They advocate social justice. They call for an end to war. They wish for a time when there might be a change in the drug possession laws. Your music did not do that. There wasn't a great deal of out-and-out editorialization in the songs that the Beatles did. At least I didn't feel it, and I don't think that a lot of parents felt it.
Now, all our messages were subliminal, you know. Meaning we were sending messages out, all right, but...
yeah, but what kinds of messages?
Just reporting on the state we were in, you know, looking back on it. And we made things like All You Need Is Love, you know, which is was our version.
That's a pretty wholesome message, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wholesome. But it was still a change in attitude. We were part of that psychedelic stuff. But which groups you talking about this advocate change?
Well, you know, I really don't know them offhand, except I sat down one evening with David Crosby, and we were talking about some songs that have been done by a number of groups, and since I don't have them fixed in my memory, I shouldn't say it was the Rolling Stones, or it was this or that or the other thing.
It must have been people doing Dylan songs, more likely.
All right.
Yeah. Are we on or what? No.
Yes, we are on, but we're on back there. Did you want to turn around and wave to the people?
I'd just like to know where it's coming from.
All right, you're over here, and I'm over there, and we're over there.
Yeah.
Huh?
Hi.
How are you?
I'm all right.
Nice to be with you.
Yeah, I like the set now. It's got better, you know. I watch the show all the time.
Thank you. But in any event, your message was subliminal. You didn't have any axe to grind with social injustice, or did you?
No, our only axe was we were the first working class singers that stayed working class and pronounced it. Didn't try and change our accents, which in England were looked down upon, probably still are. like a Bronx accent. It's equivalent to that. You know. The only change was our image, you know,
Get
being
me off
slightly.
the hook.
What do you want? What do you
get
want?
me off the hook.
Yeah, you're right.
A Bronx accent. It could be a Brooklyn accent. It could be.
Oh yeah, Brooklyn was the one I meant.
Okay,
actually.
all right, fine. Just get me off the hook.
Because that sounds like Liverpool. They talk like that there, do you know? I mean, all the stars in England before, there were a couple of sort of rock and roll stars before us, but any major star in England had to change his voice. They do it in America to get on TV and radio, right? Hi, I'm from nowhere. The one George Carlin does. Well, that goes in England, too.
Do you know that I once took an audition at a station in the southern part of the United States with a young woman who wanted to do the weather forecast on the television station? And for some curious reason, a southern accent at that time was not acceptable even in the southern United States. And so she asked the engineers if they could put the filter on the microphone that took the southern accent out of all of our voices. And of course, there is no such filter.
No.
And you had to be there, and then you would have realized how humorous that was at the
time. Well, I laughed, didn't I?
Yeah, but you laughed because you're a good guy.
No, filter, I understand the business, you know. Recording, filters. Look funny from the side.
Do you think?
Yeah. Go on.
I don't think you look so.
No,
look to the side
bad.
again.
It's not
no,
bad.
it's not bad.
You're just not used to seeing yourself sideways, that's what it is.
Were the Beatles before the groupies, or did you have those?
Oh, we had them, yes.
I mean, not did you have them, but were they
They didn't
around?
call them...
Well, did you have them? I guess that's
They were great, Tom. They were great. They didn't call them groupies then. I forgot what we used to call them. Something like slags, you know.
Slags?
So there's some word they had in England for it. And, yeah, I mean, one of the main reasons to get on stage is it's the quickest way of making contact, you know. And, you know, you went to see those movies with Elvis or somebody in it when we were still in Liverpool, and you'd see everybody waiting to see him, right? And I'd be waiting there too. And they'd all scream when he came on the screen, right? So we thought, that's a good job. That's why most musicians are on stage, actually.
Why is that?
To get a little, Tom, to get a little extra.
What, a little extra money?
Yeah, you know what it is. It is 2 o'clock, right? We're all right.
No, you got to be kidding me. Is that one of the big reasons, the sexual aspects of singing? That's the reason most of these great dedicated
I would say that any
artists are on stage, that they don't care about their music, that they're just up there for a little extra?
No, but that is a good incentive for all performers. Let's not just pin down the poor musicians.
And it wasn't, well, you speak for yourself, John.
Well, all right. I can't speak for musicians then.
No, and please don't speak for those of us who toil in the television vineyard, because that is the farthest thing from our minds.
Of course.
Yes.
I understand that.
Now, and you say
the news as well.
And then I could assume that when you say that going on the stage to perform music is one of the best ways of making contact, that what you're saying is it's one of the best ways of making sexual contact. Hmm?
Well, yes, we're not looking to have a card game. That's what it is. You know? I mean, you don't go on stage and think, that would make a nice card game.
Most of the young women who follow the rock groups then were very, very young. They were in their teens. And I just wonder if ever there was a problem where an irate father or mother might have called the dressing room on occasion and said, hey, what's going on down there? And you probably said, quiet, there's a card game going on.
Yes, sure. No, I mean, in the very early days when we were playing dance halls, there were just a certain type, which you call groupies now, which would be available for functions at the end of the night. Mm-hmm. And in general, most kids would just go home with their boyfriend or whatever, you know. Mm-hmm. And there was always a small group that just went for any performer. They didn't care whether it was a comedian or a man who ate glass, you know, as if it was on stage.
Right, the guy who swept up after the elephants. Hey, where are you going?
Right. And actually, the people that work for rock groups usually get more action than the actual rock group, right?
I don't say right to me because I
well,
don't know.
You can imagine it, Tom. They audition.
Right.
They get the cream of the crop, you know. If you want to see Elvis, you got to see me first.
Gotcha. As you said, right. Let me pause here for these announcements from our affiliated stations. We'll continue with John Lennon in 2 minutes and 5 seconds. You said earlier that it became boring to stay with that group. Why is what you're doing now not boring when that was?
Because I can change musicians whenever I like. And it tends to get into a format, you know. Because we were together much longer than the public knew us. You know, it wasn't just from '64. I was 24 in '64, and I've been playing with Paul since I was 15. And he's very nice. and George about a year later or something. So it's a long time we spent together in all the most extraordinary circumstances, from, you know, lousy rooms to great rooms. And so it wasn't just the public just think, oh, you were only together 5 years, we've only got 5 million records, you know. But we were together a long, long time, and we just became stale musically.
But how are you not stale musically now, aside from changing
Because
musicians?
I'm interacting with different musicians. To me, they're musicians. They're not just, you know, it's not like, to people, they're all stars, right? It's like having Elton John and Elvis and a few people playing, you know. To me, it isn't. It's just musicians, and to them, it's the same. So if you play with the same person all the time, you get into a rut. Even if you played tennis with the same person.
Gets boring.
It comes to a time when you know every move, and you have to find somebody else to play with.
As you listen to music today, I don't know if you listen to the radio a lot or if you listen mostly to records, but what are things that you see that you think are good or bad?
Well, that's pretty general. I like the disco music that's out now, which is great music. I like the thing that happened in Jamaica called reggae. There's a music in Jamaica called reggae, which has been around for years under the disguise of ska, blue beat, etc., etc., but it finally formed itself into reggae. And that's about the really newest thing that's happened in music in the last 5 years or 6 years.
Do you think anything new happens to music, or is it a continual series of cycles, and that maybe 100,000 years ago somebody had the same kind of beat or the same kind of whatever it is that makes it different, and that maybe the whole thing is just going in cycles, or are we in fact discovering things all the time?
I think there's something to the cycle thing, but I think if you apply the cycle idea to it, that's a cycle for everything, not just music, you know. But it's snowballing either just because of electricity or because of all the garbage everybody picks up, you know, because we keep inventing things, right? So it does change, and it has cycles in a way, you know, like I think the whole whatever it is, the universe is a series of cycles. But the music has to change because they keep inventing new things, like, you know, films change, it's now video, so it's, in that way it's different.
But don't you know that in about 1988 there's going to be a group come out that is going to pick right back to the sound that you guys had in the since you're 15 years old, and all kinds of critics and all kinds of writers are going to say, wow, look at this, we've got this whole new sound that's reminiscent of the Beatles back in the 60s?
Well, they'll probably be playing Grutsch blobs and Zachtungas, right? You know, they'll have new instruments, and although rock and roll was brand new when it came out and excited everybody, it was sort of, it had roots in blues and jazz, so in that way they would have their roots in the 60s, 70s, and possibly further back. But you can't say that rock and roll is like the 20s music, although if you look for it, you can find out where it came from. And you can find out where Beatles music came from, or any music came from. It's just like, it has its history.
Before we get into your immigration status, and we'll bring Mr. Wilds out at that time.
Hooray!
Hooray! And that is a controversy for you and for people who would want you to stay in this country. You've been involved in some other mini controversies, like the time that you were on the cover of the album without any clothes on, and like the time that you and Yoko had everybody or invited people to come into the bedroom while you were there.
We held a bed in for peace,
a bed in for peace, exactly. Why do you do those things? And I don't ask you that because I want to engender some flip response from you, but what does that gain for you as John Lennon, or what does it gain for the cause of peace in the case of the bed-in for you to do something like that?
Yoko and I, when we got together, decided that whatever we did was going to be in the papers, you know, whether it's Richard or Liz or so-and-so gets married or whatever people like us do is going to be in the papers. So we decided to utilize the space we would occupy anyway by getting married with a commercial for peace, and also a theatrical event. And the theatrical event we came up with, which utilized the least energy with the maximum effect, was to work from bed. And what we virtually had was a 7-day press conference in bed, where the press fought. The first day they fought at the door to get in, thinking there was something, you know, sexy going on. And then they
licentious.
found, that was the word I was looking for. And they found two people talking about peace, you know. And reporters always have 5 minutes with you, or 10 minutes with you. We let them ask anything for as long as they wanted for 7 days. And all the time we just kept plugging peace. And the story that came out was John and Yoko do Bed In for Peace. And we were just promoting peace, like you promote any product. You know, they promote war, join the Marines, join this. We were promoting peace. The Naked album cover was less general than that, meaning we didn't have. That was one of the first things we did. We thought, you know, we felt like two virgins. That's what the album was called, because we were in love, just met, and we were trying to make something. And we thought, to show everything. People are always looking at people like me, trying to see some secret, or what do they do? What do they do? You know, do they go to the bathroom? Do they eat?
Do you?
I do, quite a lot. You know, and we just said here, you know, and that was in 1968, and all hell broke loose. But now they're jumping around naked all over the place, right?
Yes, they are, as a matter of fact.
Right. So we were just ahead of our time.
What difficulties are there for people who are in the public eye, who know, as you and Yoko did, that whatever you do, it's going to be picked up in the press, and you really can't go out and, I suppose, have a quiet dinner or go to the park or go to a movie or something like that? What difficulties are there in your life when there's such adulation for you and such curiosity about what you do all the time?
Well, that's cool, because that's part. I reckon that's part of the
what, part of the territory?
You know? Yeah, but. You see, having gone through the Beatlemania thing, nowadays it's nothing like that. I mean, I can walk down the street and somebody will say, "Oh, hi, John," and they usually say, "How's your immigration?" You know, if it's in New York, right? And they don't hassle me. I might sign one autograph, two autographs, you know? And I don't get hassled. And I went through that period where I actually couldn't go anywhere. And so now it's like heaven. I can go and eat. We go and eat. We go to the movies. We go wherever we want. If there's an announcement, like there's an opening and everybody's going to be there, you get a lot of noise and cameras and flashbulbs. But if we just decide to go to dinner, it's cool, you know? We're probably less recognizable than you now, being on every night.
I doubt that.
You're on every night. You kidding?
But it doesn't make any difference, because when you were on, you had 35, 40, 50 million people. I'll never forget the time that you came to Los Angeles. I was working there for Channel 5, and you were giving a concert at, I don't remember where it was. Hollywood Bowl, is that right? Thank you. And there were the lines for the tickets, and there was all the attendant publicity prior to the appearance and everything else. And one of our reporters went out and covered all this, and he came back and he said, "It's going to be wild out there tonight." And I, because I'm not very smart, went on the air and I said, "Well, if you'd like to know where the Beatles are, call this guy, and his home number is." And I mean, his phone didn't stop ringing for 4 days. It was just an obscenity. And I wish that if he's watching, I'm sorry I did that. And so your viewability or your visibility is so tremendously high, or at least was then, and I just wondered if it had kind of slopped over into your career now.
No, I mean, I can get around now, you know. I can get. I'm glad too. I don't miss it. I'm glad it happened, but I don't miss it.
Yeah,
like
in spite of the boredom, in spite of the fact that maybe there were little dissensions, those were good times for you.
Oh, huh? Yeah. I mean, the boredom was in the music. I mean, that came after all the Beatlemania.
Did you save your money?
What we could get our hands on, yeah.
What do you mean, what you could get your hands on?
Well, a lot of it got siphoned off before we even got near it, you know. I mean, we didn't know anything about business or anything like that, you know. And there's a lot of money. There's a lot of millionaires around this world, so, yeah. But that's part of the action, too.
Okay. Let me pause here for these announcements. We'll continue with John Lennon on tomorrow in 2 minutes and 5 seconds, and I trust you'll stay tuned. Thank you. Among other things, watching this again proves how dumb people look when their hair is too long and they wore those leisure suits. Awful. We'll get back to this interview with John Lennon, recorded in April of 1975, after these announcements for the NBC television stations coast to coast. I'll try to make this the last question I ask about the past and about the Beatles. You must watch what your former colleagues are doing, and do you derive satisfaction from it? Are you happy for their successes?
Yeah. I'm most happy, I guess we all are in a way, for Ringo's success. Because the other three of us, you know, it always went round Ringo was dumb, but he ain't dumb. But he didn't have that much of a writing ability, and he wasn't known for writing his own material. And there was a bit of a worry that, you know, although he can make movies, and he does make movies, and he's good at it, that how was his recording career going to be? And in general, it's probably better than mine, actually, so he's doing
And what's
all right.
amazing is that he's done it with some songs that were popular when you and I were both teenagers in this country.
A lot of You're 16 and things like that, stuff that,
Oh My My?
Well, I think he wrote that. Is that an oldie?
Only You?
Oh, Only You. I suggested that for him.
You did?
Yeah.
Now, why is it that those songs done by Ringo Starr achieved this popularity when they were popular 20 years ago?
Because a good song is a good song.
Okay.
You know, and you can jazz it up or do it with whatever rhythm you like. But if the song is there, it stands.
When musical groups become successful, or musicians, or really when anybody in the public eye becomes successful, immediately there are rumors about their personal lives, and I suppose the fact that some people are caught in the possession of certain unlawful substances like marijuana or cocaine or LSD or speed. A lot of people say that's all they do. They smoke a lot of grass, they eat a lot of LSD, they're all acid heads, and they're all all rocked out. How much of it is there going on in truth?
I wouldn't know, you know. I mean, what do I know?
Come on, John. Come on.
I know as much as you.
Come on.
In
Well,
truth,
I don't
how
know
much of it goes on where? You know, it depends where.
Well, in your little coterie of friends.
My friends are as clean as a whistle.
I'm sure they are, as a hound's tooth, in the words of... And it's no more predominant or prevalent in your industry than it is in insurance, in retailing, and in selling tires. Is that what you're saying?
I think you'll find a lot of middle-class people in their mid-30s who grew up in the 60s have marijuana and now cocaine around like you'd have a glass of wine. You know, I'm not saying it's good, you know, and cocaine's not too good for you at all, you know, but I'm saying that it's there, and a lot of perfectly, quotes, ordinary people use it.
If you were to be approached by the National Council on Drug Addiction, or whatever the name of the agency is, to make one of those little films that run on television, you'd say, "Hi, I'm John Lennon, and I like to tell all young people that dope is a bummer and cocaine is bad." Would you do that? I mean, do you believe that strongly in there?
It would depend how the advert was made, you know, because you can't bull blank the kids, because they know more about dope than I do now. There's drugs on the market that I don't even know what they are, you know. And so if it was done the way I would like to do it, I
How would you like to do it?
I'd have to think about it. I'd have to talk to whoever asked me to do it, you know. I mean, it's no good me saying, "Hey, dope is bad, don't do it." You know, they say, "What? So what? Who are you?" You know.
Well, you have a certain following among young people, and they might listen to you, whereas they would not listen to Jascha Heifetz, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but people, there's an illusion that just because somebody buys your record that they're going to do what you tell them. It doesn't work that way. If I tell them, go jump in a river, just because they buy my record...
No,
you know,
not at all.
right?
But certainly, you'd be surprised how people who appear on television or people who appear before audiences are looked towards for some kind of personal insight into the world or their own lives that a lot of times those people don't even have.
Yeah, they might ask questions of famous people, but in actuality, you cannot tell people anything. They have to find out for themselves. I mean, you can leave signposts saying, you know, it's dangerous here or you can fall over there, but in reality, you know, it's no good telling people anything. They have to find out.
What part did drugs play in leading to the present circumstance in which you find yourself? And I think we can tell that part, and then we'll bring
Leon Wilds.
Mr. Wilds out, and he will be here for the discussion of your immigration procedure.
In the late 60s, there was a headhunting cop who was not very high up in the drug department in London, which was pretty new anyway. They had 2 dogs for the whole department. And he went round and bussed every pop star he could get his hands on, and he got famous. And some of the pop stars had dope in the house, and some of them didn't. It didn't matter to him. He planted it or did whatever. Later on, that's what he did to me, because at that time I didn't have any drugs. And
he planted something in your house. He planted marijuana in your house, didn't he? Or you say he did.
Yeah, I mean, I say he did. I know.
Well, I have to say that because I wasn't there.
Well, he's not going to get us. We're in America, all right? He's in jail now, by the way, because he later got to be top dog, and he had a big drug scandal thing going, like the one that was going over here, the big investigation in the New York police when I was first here, the one, the Serpico thing. Well, we had a little one in England which happened after I left, and he was caught in Australia trying to escape. You know, the English always run to Australia thinking they're going to vanish there. You know? So he was caught. And I didn't think about...
Can't vanish in Australia. Everybody knows it's down there.
Yeah, but they always have the illusion that if you go to Australia, you get away with it. You know?
Sure.
And I at the time didn't even think I was bust. And to cut a long story, that he planted me. To cut a long story short, I'd just moved into an apartment and I'd had everything moved from my other apartment. It was all over the place. So I thought, well, maybe this is a bit of hash that was left over. And I'd forgotten all about it. Possibly that was what happened, you know. And I just copped a plea, you know. He said, I won't get you for obstruction if you cop a plea. And I thought, oh, it's $100 or whatever, you know. It's no skin off my nose, little thinking it would reverberate. And he said, oh, you know, I'll let your missus go, you know, because they never... In England at that time, the law was, if it was in this building, Mr. NBC would be caught for it. You know, he was responsible for it, even if he wasn't living there. That was the law then.
Do you mean that if an officer of the law were to come in here,
yeah,
and they were to find an unlawful substance upon these premises, John,
yeah,
that the president of this television network would be liable to arrest if that law were in effect?
That was an English law at the time that's been changed. Yeah. So you better put it out.
No, this is... no. Oh, come on. Don't do that to old Tom. See that old filler there, folks? Got the writing right here on the paper. Now, come on.
We all know you're a nicotine addict. Anyway, the guy planted me, and it didn't dawn on me till later, till I called a few friends who'd also been busted and said, did you have stuff? One of them said, yeah, I did have stuff. It was on the table. They didn't even notice it. They planted a whole pile in my bedroom. You know, he had it out on the table, some marijuana. So the guy was a rip-off, and he's in jail, and half that drug department's in jail, too.
But now, you thought that all you'd have to do was pay the $100 fine, but then what happened?
Well, I did just pay the fine, you know, and that was the end of it, and it went in the papers, whoopee, and another pop star bites the dust, you know. And then I came over to America and just, with no particular decision, decided that I'd like to live here, you know. I came over for a visit or something, and I was always coming and going and coming and going, and Yoko had been educated here, and she was always going on at me about New York, you know, and she finally showed it me and walked me around. And I fell in love with it. We thought, get an apartment instead of staying in a hotel all the time.
Surely.
So the next minute we thought, hey, well, let's stay, you know, isn't it great? So we also had other complications going on. The show isn't long enough for it, about her ex-husband running away with her daughter, and there was court cases in Houston, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and we had to keep applying for these visas. And after you bust, it's suggested that you don't apply for 9 months, you know. And people now have problems getting in. Mick Jagger, Stones, lots of musicians, Paul. Lots of people they have to sort of do a lot of ritual to get in before they can come and go. So we tried to say, look, we have this big case, we need to come in. And there was always a hassle and a hassle and a hassle. And then they started trying to throw me out.
All right, so we're at the point now where it might be helpful to have Mr. Wilds, your attorney, present, just so that nothing is said that might prejudice.
Well, it's really in case you have a question that I can't answer. You know, they ask me what's happening with you, and I say, well, there's some paper went to some senator that called, and I don't know who
All right, fine. We will have Mr. Leon Wilds, Mr. Lennon's attorney, join us after these announcements. Tomorrow we'll take away from Manhattan in 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Joining John Lennon with us now is Mr. Leon Wilds, his attorney, and if any questions come up as to where it stands or where it is in the courts or legal appeals or whatever, Mr. Wilds has the expertise to speak to those points. Plus, he looks nice on television. You were told it might be a good idea to wait for 9 months before applying for citizenship?
No, this was after the bust in England, before applying to visit the United States.
I see.
That it would be a cool idea. That's sort of, you know, it would be a cool idea.
What is your status in the country right now?
That's why Leon's here. What am I, Leon?
Well, John was charged with being deportable in the United States for being an overstay by a very interesting turn of events. The district director of the New York Immigration Service charged him with being an overstay after he gave him a 2-week extension of his time. And in the middle of that 2-week period, he
was here on visa, right? And he overstayed? Is that the position?
He had originally come in as a visitor, and he had had a number of extensions. And then finally, the Immigration Service gave him a 2-week extension. And right in the midst of that 2-week final extension, they revoked the period that they had given him, and they declared that he had been here as an overstay for the week that he had been here with their authorization, and thus the Immigration Service created the very status that they charged him with being deportable for. We fought that deportation case, and a decision was finally rendered after about a year that he was, in fact, an overstay. Now, the essential problem in a deportation case and what lies beneath the surface is that the only way one can get out of it is either to ask permission to leave this country voluntarily and get out, which John was not prepared to do, or to apply for permanent residence status. And the law prescribes that any person who had ever been convicted of any offense, no matter how small, relating to the possession of marijuana, at any time in his lifetime and under any circumstances, cannot obtain residence. And so that what was happening when the government did this little routine of revoking his stay and charging him with being an overstay, they were locking him actually into a position where the only application he could make was one which they were pretty sure he could never succeed in.
Which was?
Pardon?
The application that he would make would be one that he would never succeed in. Permanent residence.
Yes.
All right.
Now, we applied for permanent residence for John and for Yoko. We won Yoko's case, and she was granted residence, but John's case was denied. We went up on appeal before the Board of Immigration Appeals, and we lost there as well. And we are now before the United States Circuit Court of Appeals on the same issue. And basically, on that case, the issue resolves itself into whether or not what happened in England amounts to possession under our law, and whether what he possessed in England was actually marijuana under our law. You see, the substance which John was convicted of possessing, he pleaded guilty, was called cannabis resin. That's a generic term, and it includes a number of substances. We had one of the top experts in the United States, a psychiatrist at Harvard Medical School, testify, and he gave the only expert testimony. And his testimony was that cannabis resin is not marijuana, and marijuana is not cannabis resin. Yet the Immigration Service came to the conclusion that it was marijuana. And finally, with respect to the possession aspect, our law in the United States is very clear with respect to possession. You cannot be convicted in this country for possessing an illicit substance unless it is clear that you had a knowledge as to the illicit nature of the substance that you had. In England, at the time of John's conviction, a law existed which had been uniformly criticized throughout the world and which was later repealed. And it provided that the government did not have to prove that you knew the nature of the substance whatsoever. So that if you possessed a bottle and you thought it had aspirin in it, and in fact if the aspirin turned out to be some serious drug, you must have pleaded guilty under those circumstances because there was no way out. And that actually was the legal situation that forced John into this, and that's where we stand with respect to the immigration.
I know that this is not a excuse me.
Yeah, I was just going to say one interesting point was that when they started the initial case, they claimed that it was a local New York problem, and they also started the proceedings against John and Yoko. Well, halfway or a third of the way through the proceedings, or whatever the number is, they discovered that actually Yoko did not have any record in England, and also she had a green card by a previous American husband. So this local case that was just another case like any other alien, which is what they kept claiming, was not one of those cases. So then they suddenly had to find something else, which was this overstay business, which they pulled a fast one. And so they had to give Yoko the green card. And now one of them, I think his name is Green, keeps writing to the papers saying they're still treating me like a normal citizen, a normal alien, right, only on overstay. They're no longer mentioning about marijuana and the original normal reason I was being thrown out. And it's just interesting that the case keeps changing to suit them, you know?
I want to ask you a question about that in a second. We'll continue after these final announcements from our affiliated stations. I know that this is not a satisfactory question, but maybe you have a satisfactory answer for it. You know, when all of us were little, we were told why try to be someplace where they tell you that you're not wanted? You know, if you go over to a friend's house and his mother says, hey, I don't want you around, you come home. You could live almost anywhere you wanted to in this world.
Yeah.
And so if you're getting hassled this way, and this does not in any way negate the incorrectness of the hassle, if it is as your attorney states, why put up with it?
Because I'd like to live in the land of the free, Tom. And also, if it was up to Joe Doe on the street, he either doesn't care about it or would be glad to have an old Beatle living here, you know? You know, if I get in a cab with a cab driver, it has nothing to do with music or anything. He'll ask me, how are you doing? I hope you can stay. So on your average citizen either doesn't care or wouldn't mind me staying here. I like to be here because this is where the music came from, this is what influenced my whole life and got me where I am today, as it were. And I love the place, I'd like to be here. I've got a lot of friends here. And this is where I want to be, you know. Statue of Liberty, welcome. I even brought my own cash.
Brooklyn Bridge, want to buy it?
No, you're the ones that buy our bridges.
I should say that this program is being videotaped, this is on the air the 28th of April, so it's about 20 days ahead of schedule as we sit in the studio now. And there could very well be developments, I suppose, I'm just guessing here, between now and the air date for this that will possibly make this whole conversation moot if you're that far along. I don't know. Is that true, Counselor?
It's quite possible. There is another case which we haven't discussed, and that is our case against the government.
You've got one against them.
That's true.
Yeah.
We've gone to the court on 3 separate occasions, but the action that I'm talking about is the selective prosecution action. We had some information that the deportation proceedings against John were not normally brought. Certainly the procedure followed was not normal. And we had learned that rumors got to the Senate Internal Security Committee that John had some idea, or was rumored to have some idea, of appearing at the Republican National Convention in 1972 and leading an anti-Vietnam War demonstration or the like. And that this information in the form of a memorandum was transmitted by Senator Strom Thurmond to the then Attorney General John Mitchell, who may have at the time been sitting with the other hat as well as head of CREEP, the Committee to Re-elect the President.
Yes, the former President.
And we understand that a series of memoranda led all the way down to the District Director in New York, and that the action he took was not as a result of John's immigration status, but rather as a result or an intention to prevent John from exercising constitutionally protected rights.
What are they afraid of you doing if you have permanent residence here?
I don't know. I think when it was started, somebody didn't want me here, and now they probably don't mind, you know. It's just that it's a bureaucratic thing. It's gone on, and how do we stop it? You know, maybe whoever makes the decision doesn't know whether it'd be either politically right or what's going to happen if we suddenly stop now when we started it. I mean, it's very sort of embarrassing for everyone, I guess. And I don't think that half the people that started it are now having their own problems, right? So I don't know where I am. I know there's a different lot of people in charge of my case now, and I'm sure they're not as hot to get me out because they didn't even have the Republican convention in San Diego, and I was not committed to go there either. So
I have less than 1 minute left. You know, you've been a very low-key and very mild-mannered guest on this program, and yet I've heard you described as being an egomaniac, and I'm having a little trouble understanding that description of you vis-a-vis the way that you've really been during this hour we spent together. Why would you be called that?
Because one gets a reputation, you know, for one thing or other, whether it's true or false. If being an egomaniac means I believe in what I do and my art or my music, in that respect you can call me that, you know, and I believe in what I do, and I'll say it, you know. And otherwise this is pretty much me, you know, apart from being on TV, you know.
Well, you're one of the nicest egomaniacs I've ever met.
Well, so are you, Tom.
Wasn't that spectacular? I mean, when you look back on it, I mean, like anything, it was great then. But people just have this dream about Pepper. It was good for then, you know.
I was very cross that the BBC in their infinite wisdom, decided to ban some of the tracks, and they wouldn't play it. They wouldn't play A Day in the Life. Why, I don't know. They wouldn't. And they wouldn't play Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds because this rumour went round that it was all connected with drugs, and Lucy in the Sky actually stood for LSD, which wasn't true, and that it was an album which actually was promoting the use of drugs amongst the young. I was aware of them smoking pot. I wasn't aware that they did anything really serious. In fact, I was so innocent that I actually took John up onto the roof when he was having an LSD trip, not knowing what it was.
I never took it in the studio. Once I did accidentally. I thought it was taking some uppers. And I was not in a state of handling it, you know, but I took it, and then I just noticed, I said, I was so scared on the mic, you know. I said, what was it, you know? I said, I feel ill. I thought I felt ill, and it was I thought it was going to crack, you know, and then I said, I must get some air, and they all took me upstairs on the roof, and George Martin was looking at me funny, you know. And then it dawned on me, I must have taken acid.
So the only place I could take him to get fresh air was on the roof. And we went up there, and it was a wonderful starry night, and he looked up, went to the edge of an 18-inch parapet, and looked up at the stars and said, aren't they fantastic? And of course, to him, they would have been especially fantastic, I suppose. They were just little stars to me at the time.
Paul, how often have you taken LSD?
4 times. The man at the time, the newscaster, showed up and said, is it true you've had drugs? And I made a sort of lightning decision. I thought, well, I'm either going to sort of try and bluff this. They're at my door. I can't, you know, go, no, go away. Or I'm just going to tell him. And I thought, sod it, you know. But I did talk to him beforehand, and I said, look, you know what's going to happen here? I'm going to get the blame for telling everyone I take drugs. I said, but you're the people who are going to distribute this thing. I said, I'll tell you. I said, but if you've got any worries about this having an effect on kids, then you don't show it.
Well, do you think you have now encouraged your fans to take drugs?
I don't think it'll make any difference, you know. I don't think my fans are going to take drugs just because I did, you know. But the thing is, that's not the point anyway, you know. I was asked whether I had or not. And then from then on, the whole bit about how far it's going to go and how many people it's going to encourage is up to the newspapers and up to you, you know, on television. I mean, you're spreading this now at this moment. This is going into all the homes, you know, in Britain. And I'd rather it didn't, you know. But you're asking me the question. You want me to be honest. I'll be honest, you know.
I don't know. It just seems strange to me because we'd been trying to get him to take it for about 18 months. And then it just seemed funny that one day he's on the television talking all about it.
The problem was it then gave the press a field day to be on all our cases, you know. I personally didn't think it was any of their business. But, you know, once he said it, you know, whoever said anything in the Beatles, the other 3 had to deal with it. You know, which we did with all love because, you know, we loved each other. But I could have done without it myself.
Now, the point about the whole drug scene was the press asked Paul, have you taken LSD? This is how it all came out. Otherwise, we didn't say a word about it, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just a personal thing, right?
Well, you see, I feel to this day that, you know, we did take certain substances, but never to a great extent at the sessions. You know, we took a little, but whenever we'd overdid our intake, the music we made was absolutely shit. And you know, we'd go home real happy with the tape, and we'd play it when we got home, and you'd play it the next day, and it was just, every time we'd come back to record again, we'd all look at each other and say, well, we have to do that again, because, you know, it didn't work. It didn't work for the Beatles to be too deranged when making music.
You got me beat hard, hard, beat any way you want to let it roll. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got me doing what you want me, baby, what you want me to go.
Got me up, down, down, up, any way you want me on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. You got me doing what you want. Oh baby, what you want me to do.
At the beginning, when I joined, Paul was the only one who'd sleep with me.
Well, there was actually a little bit of a thing to that.
I was never very prejudiced.
No, I thought that was the best move, really, because when you joined and you were like the new fella and nobody, and I thought, well, if I hang out with you, then they'll all be like, you know. So I thought it'd be good to
put Paul with him.
Yeah,
because
then it would
be all right then.
Yeah, it
so
would
anyway,
because then
but then it changed. It would be with anybody. I mean, for a while it was John and I. We just sort of went on for different.
I enjoyed it a lot because it wasn't the kind of thing you'd done much. I mean, as kids we'd hitchhiked. So like me and George got down to Harlock and you'd sort of sleep in the same bed and just because it's like a bed B&B kind of thing. I hadn't really done much of that being away from home when we started.
I haven't done any of it because I'm an only child.
And Butlins almost. Yeah.
Yeah, but I still slept on my own.
So it was kind of good, and so it was great. You sort of staying in a room with a friend and that, and seeing his habits. I mean, you stayed up late, didn't you? You couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
So he'd have to have the light on. So it'd be like
I was frightened of the dark.
It was poor man. So you'd have to, he'd have the light over there, and you'd have to sleep this way, and you couldn't ask him to turn it. And it was good though, you get to know each other a bit that way.
My hair, I'm still trying to make it go back like a rock and roll hair. But really, naturally, it just goes forward. And we used to use that Vaseline, like really thick Vaseline, and just get it go back like that. And I remember once we went to the swimming baths in Hamburg. And I remember walking back down towards the Reeperbahn, and it dried, and it was all like that. And then by the evening, we saw our friends who was all named Jürgen and Astrid. And I remember them saying, oh, no, don't do that. Leave it like it is. It's really good. And it was kind of like that. And everybody around that time was starting to just, because of their influence, if they'd have said, no, it's naff, we would have probably changed it. But because they liked it, then we liked it.
We didn't really go with it in a major way. We still...
When it got into a permanent
Well,
fixture.
I remember when John and I went to, he had his 21st and he got 100 quid off his uncle who was a dentist in Edinburgh. High, you know, very, very elevated stuff that. We'd never known the likes of like anyone who had a relative as a dentist.
Anybody who had 100 quid.
Or 100 quid. Well, to this day I say no one's ever given me 100 quid on my birthday. 100 smackers. Whoa! That was, I mean, and then, obviously, you can imagine, it was just like...
Only I'd have known last Saturday.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, 100 smacks. Next time. But,
I may even have it.
But John got this 100 quid, so he said, oh, you know, what should we do? We were hanging out. So we decided to go to Spain, spend this 100 quid. We got as far as Paris. We hitchhiked, got as far as Paris, and decided, no, we'll maybe go to Spain, maybe later in the week, because we kept liking Paris. Anyway, we bumped into Jürgen, who was our friend from Astrid and Jürgen and Klaus. Bumped into Jürgen and said, your hair's nice, you know, could you do ours like that? So he said, are you sure you want this? You know, maybe, no, you know.
Hello,
said, yeah, go on, you know, we're on holiday, Paris, go on and all that. And so he did it, and then we arrived back in Liverpool with this sort of, me and John with this sort of funny hair forward, like you were saying, and everyone was a bit dubious about it, but it just fell into the thing then, and we sort of kept it forward.
Sounds
and
good
you
to me.
brushed yours forward. Ringo always had a big grey shock under there from when he was a kid.
Still
Well,
there,
he had to
actually.
have
Still got
his
it.
push done to join the band then.
And he had
Remember
to.
that?
It's the only way I could join.
And it was like, what's his name?
But it was cool, because when
the
it came
beard.
forward, you didn't see his grey bit.
He had a beard too.
Beard.
Yeah.
Beard's got to
Stay
go.
off the
It's like
beard, keep the sideburns,
Buddy Rich.
and put your hair down.
You know, we
It's
want to
gotta
see
go.
these faces.
Yeah, we've got a look
See your
going
fucking
here.
face, man. No,
I
these
looked
beards.
about,
We don't want to have beards.
Like this, actually, just before I joined you guys.
That's right, yeah, only with a suit.
We actually saw a London band in Hamburg. And one of these London bands had this boot with a big point, it had like a chisely pointy toe and a Cuban heel. And we thought, they're good. Where did you get those? And he said, it's in London. It was called Anello and David's. And we went to Anello and David's and bought those boots. And then later we thought, hey, they make them. We'll get our own made.
It was a
And
ballet
so
shop,
the one
wasn't
that became the Beatle boot was like ones we had made, but the original one, remember, it had that elastic down the side, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a ballet shop, wasn't it? Anello and David was ballet, made ballet stuff and tutus and shoes. It's where all the little girls went. So we'd be
Desmond
getting
Tutu.
we were getting our Beatle boots made, and there'd be
We're getting
little
our tutus
ladies
made.
with their children, you know. No, you had the tutu. I never had one of them. I just had, well, it was Ringo with his feet bandaged, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You had to go into those little ballet shoes.
so yeah, so we had a maid, and then later we had, you know, we started realizing you can get whatever you wanted. So, because at first they were all the same. Then we could have, like when we made the films, we get, I got a cord suit. What boots would go? I'll get cord boots. Just give them the same fabric and make them. And then we had like ankle ones, calf ones, knee high, you know, all kinds of ones.
And there was this one that went.
Oh, no.
I've been thinking of linking my life with you. Thinking of linking our love so true. Thinking of linking can only be done by two. Yeah. It was about one of the first ones. There was a commercial in on the cinema for Link Furniture called Thinking of Linking. We read the pictures. Good intro. Good intro, yeah. Well, I've been thinking of linking my love so true. Thinking of linking my life with you. Thinking of linking can only be done by two. There's no second verse.
Cost 75 quid, my first car.
Off Johnny Hutch.
That was a good car.
Was it off Johnny Hutch?
Off Johnny
Now,
Hutch.
what colour was it?
Red and white.
Hand painted.
Yeah.
Painted by hand. And you had a green Anglia. Blue.
That was much later, though.
Yeah. I took you to get that car.
Did you?
Yeah, I took you
to Warrington.
Yeah. And as we were coming home, you may not remember.
Ah, yeah.
You were speeding and I was speeding, and we were both close to each other. And then you overtook this car in front, and I got right up to this car, and I was ready to overtake him. Just as I got right up his arse, a dog ran out in front of him, so he slammed on his brakes. I smashed right into him, broke the fuck out of my car. What was lucky, it was by a garage, because I drove it. Well, we pushed it into the garage. Because I had no license or insurance.
Did I stop or did I keep going?
Oh, you just kept going.
I didn't see what happened.
You just didn't give a damn.
Even till this day, I never knew about that.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, couldn't we do Blue Moon of Kentucky? Well, Blue Moon. No.
Yeah, because the chorus was there.
Remember it well. I have some memories that I met him several times.
But
maybe it was just the one night.
It was just such a long night.
To him.
It's called flashbacks, I think.
Yeah.
Did you meet him again?
No, I met him just once. You met him?
I met him in Madison Square Garden when he was just, I suppose, a couple of years before the end. It's sad, really.
Rhinestone Cowboy.
Because it was like he had all them squawking girl singers and trumpet players and all that stuff, but he had a great rhythm section, James Burton and
sure,
you know, all that gang. And I just wanted to say to him, just get your jeans on and get your guitar and just do that.
Bit of tape.
I went to see him in Vegas
and bugger all that other crap.
In
the
the 70s.
Thing about
after the.
Oh, you saw him in Vegas?
Yeah.
I only met him that once, that night.
He was, when I saw him, I was like a hippie and I had all this denim on and I had long hair and stuff down to here. It was in the early 70s and I went backstage to meet him, and you know those big dressing rooms, like, you know, miles of toilets and stuff. And so I was sitting there talking to the guys again, and he was nowhere to be seen. And then finally he came around the corner and he had that big white outfit with all the gold things and big belt buckle like this. And he looked like Ringo. He was all, his beard was varnished. No, you know, all his hair was black and he was all tanned and stuff. And he seemed like, I thought I was meeting Vishnu or, you know, Krishna or somebody. It was just like, wow. And I just felt like this little snotty, grubby little, you know, Elvis, how are you? You know, and he was like, hey. Just all this big white thing. And I just wanted to say, oh, why don't you just go and do That's All Right, Mama, and, you know, and
Baby,
forget
let's
all
play
them
house.
chick singers, all, I did it my way. It was sad, but he did a couple of good tunes.
Yeah. But did you ever meet him again?
Not after that day, but he was great when he was great.
Ain't she sweet? I asked you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? Last night in her direction, on me all mine. Ain't that perfection for your love? I repeat. Don't you think she's kind of sweet, neat? Now I ask you very confidentially, ain't she sweet? Ain't she sweet? Ain't she sweet?
Let's go. Well, this has really been a really nice day for me, chaps. So
it's been a pleasure for me too.
Have you? Well, we're going to have to see you for the next 40 years.
Yeah. Well, that should end the series. We could end on this note then. I think it was Candlestick Park.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was.
This is Candlestick Park.
This is Candlestick Park. No, it's been a very nice day. Thanks for having us, George.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's been really beautiful and moving for me. I like hanging out with you two guys.
Little churchy face.
You were talking about the business of the Beatles, and this to me is fascinating. When they break up, all right, and who knows who broke? You know, everyone has a theory.
I know.
Who broke it up?
John.
John did.
Yeah.
And he tried to pin it all on you.
No, I don't think anyone tried to pin it on it. It just came out that way. That's a long story.
But there was a meeting where John came in and said, hey, guys, I'm leaving the group.
Right, he was with Yoko.
He'd found Yoko, and John loved strong women.
Yes.
His mother had been a strong woman. His auntie who brought him up had been a strong woman. And bless her, but his first wife wasn't. She'd once said to me, you know, all I want is a sort of a guy who wants a pipe and slippers.
Right.
Come
Stay
home and
yeah.
do that. And I thought, whoa, that's not John.
You got the wrong
and
guy.
So John had met up with Yoko, and even though we thought, oh God, a bit intrusive, you know, she used to sit in on the recording sessions, and we'd never had anything like that.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, you think the guy was totally in love with her.
Yeah.
And, you know, you've just got to respect that. So we did, and I do.
But this song fascinates me. And I thought it was kind of an attack. Not I kind of thought this, I know it. And it's my favorite song you ever wrote. That was your first mistake. You took your lucky break and broke it in two. That was directed at John.
We were writing songs at each other.
Yes.
It's like weaponizing songs.
Too many people. But this is an attack on John. Because John was going around proselytizing. He was preaching to everybody. And in this song, you're saying too many people preaching at us. Yeah. Too many people going underground. You took your lucky break and you broke it in two. And I loved it. I love this song. I don't love that you guys ended up like going at each other in music, but
yeah, it
was
didn't
honest.
last long. We got over it, luckily. I mean, I feel very blessed that we got over it.
Yeah.
Because if we hadn't, and then John goes and gets killed, I don't know how I would have dealt with that.
If you weren't on good terms at that point.
Yeah, I was very lucky because we sort of got it back together, and it was beautiful. I would ring him or go see him in New York.
Had the four of you ever gotten together since the Beatles broke up? Had there ever been a time where you were all four in the same room, like actually doing something together?
No.
Never?
No, not really.
Because the business was so bitter. It was like at the end, the breakup with the lawyers. I heard a crazy story that, and I don't know if it's true. So you're about to put out the McCartney solo album. The Beatles are done.
Mm-hmm.
The Beatles decide to put out Let It Be. Ringo, this is crazy to me, comes to your house with a letter from John and George and Ringo saying you are not to put out your McCartney album at the same time we're putting out a Beatles album.
Yeah.
But Ringo hand delivers this.
I know.
You took him and threw him right out of the fucking house.
I did.
Yes.
I did.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
I don't blame you.
It was bad enough that we were splitting up.
Yeah.
It was bad enough that all that money we'd earned and all that fame was going down the pan.
Yes.
And there was this guy who was going to take it all. And it was that close.
Yes.
And I was having to fight. I said, no, guys, we can keep it. We don't have to give it to this guy, you know. And there's Ringo delegated to come around to me and tell me, because my release date was firmly fixed.
Yes.
And everyone knew this was the release date. So I was going, okay, well, this is okay.
Yeah.
And then they come around, Ringo comes around and he says, no, you won't.
With his legal paper.
Fuck off! Get out of my house!
Oh, my God.
And he did.
And you must have been...
again, even that, you know, we got it back together again.
Yeah, I know.
That's families for you.
Hello and good afternoon, Beatles fans around the world. Welcome along to this exclusive Q&A. It's my absolute honour to welcome Ron, Sir Paul and Ringo. How are you all?
Well, good, thank you.
Great to have you. No, I am armoured with amazing questions from your fans from all over the world. So we've got limited time, and I'm going to crack on if that's all right. Loads of questions about this wonderful film that you've made, the Beatles 8 Days a Week, the touring years. I'm going to head to Kirkwood in Missouri first, if that's okay. Thank you, Sherlyn, for your question. Ringo, Paul and Ron, what is unique about this movie compared to the other films that have been put out about the Beatles? Ron?
Well, one thing I thought I could bring to it was, you know, a point of view. And so as a director, and I was allowed to have final cut and the things that I would normally have on a movie, it's sort of a, you know, a perspective on this journey. It also focuses just on the touring years, which makes it kind of an adventure story. And last, it has, you know, new footage that hasn't been seen before. It has a better mixed digital, you know, sound and so forth. It makes the concert experience, I think, really exciting for audiences, more so than it's ever been able to be before.
You two want to pick up on that?
I haven't seen it.
No,
I can't believe this.
No, I haven't. We're looking forward to tomorrow night, as you can imagine. No, I mean, what Ron, so we know, we've seen bits and pieces, so we know there's new footage that fans sent in.
Yeah.
So that's very exciting.
And remix sound.
Remix sound that Giles Martin did.
Yeah.
And that's incredible because we're going to, in the cinema, we're going to actually be able to hear ourselves. The first time we couldn't hear ourselves when we were live. So much screaming going on. But now he's got it under control.
Although there's liable to be a lot of screaming in the theater. Who knows?
I'll be screaming.
This one comes from, I hope I get your name right, because it's beautiful, Ildwara. I think that's how you say it. We don't know where you're from, but I'm assuming somewhere gorgeous. For Paul and Ringo, how was your reaction when Ron said to you that he wanted to make a documentary about the touring years for the band?
Well, the documentary had been started and we'd been asked from our Apple group of companies, and we thought that was a good idea to show another side. And it was just great news when Ron came on board, because we both love Ron. And he didn't know that, but and so that's how it started. And I remember when we saw the first cut, and then we went to be filmed by Ron. And it was a lot of other people doing a lot of talking, which I believe he's cut out now. And it's mainly him and I. So, it made it better for me.
Yeah.
And to see the footage was exciting, though, because I hadn't seen it 1,000 years, you know what I mean? So that was great. And then to see that Giles got good sound.
And it was exciting, that Ron was going to do it because we loved his work as a sort of Hollywood director. And we liked him as Richie in Happy Days as well. But, we knew that...
Never live it down.
I don't want it.
We're not even going further back. But, you knew that we were in very good hands and it was someone who was going to actually look for the story and make something different with all of this massive material that he had to sift through with his team, But once we knew he was on board, it was like, oh yeah, this is going to be good.
It is. It's finding something new about the Beatles that hasn't been said before. And you really do. You strip past that whole kind of chaos to find out these people and the experience they're going through. It's wonderful. I've seen it. I've been lucky. This one's from Adam in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He says, to Ron, in your opinion, how does documentary storytelling compare to directing, a biopic such as Frost Nixon, for example?
Well, in both instances, you're trying to sort of get at, the truth of the story. With a scripted movie, you take a lot more creative license because you collapse scenes, you combine characters, you take those liberties because after all, you're trying to create a movie. Here, this is a kind of a document, and I needed to honor all of the people who for decades have been encyclopedic about the Beatles and know everything about it. But I also really, really wanted to make a movie. Maybe I was thinking about my own kids, sort of millennials, who think they know a lot about the band, they love the music, but they don't really have a sense of that intensity of what they achieved, what they lived through, what was going on in the world around them at that time, that context. So, I really just applied the same sensibilities that I do to every story, which is what can I learn about this? What can I offer up that I think's entertaining, involving, engaging, and memorable? And so I hope that people who love the Beatles, it's a great journey back, and then I hope for other people, there's some insights and something new to come to understand.
And a lot of singing along opportunities. I annoyed the person sat next to me so much. This one's from Douglas, who's in Bonnyrigg in Midlothian, who says he'd like to ask Paul and Ringo about their workload during the touring years. What with touring and recording, making movies, and even Christmas shows.
Yeah.
Did Brian ever give you a day off?
Yeah, one day off a month we had. And then Paul would judge a beauty contest.
I needed something to do.
He is the workaholic.
Couldn't have a day off.
We could relax a little, but he had to keep going.
Oh, welcome to Abbey Road, by the way, viewers.
Yeah.
Hey, come on.
Here we are.
You're right in. Come on in. Yeah, man.
It was all done on this carpet.
Just this little rug right here. But is it, looking back on this time and stuff, is it kind of crazy to think that you were in it? Looking from the outside in.
We were in it and we loved it, and it was busy. And we made a record, we played a live gig, we did a photo shoot, and then we had lunch. And then we started the afternoon. I mean, it was busy, you know, but it was great. We were doing something. You know.
I mean, back then, you know, I don't think it was like, pinch yourself, you're in the Beatles. It was like, we're just in the Beatles, we're going, like he says, you know, we're going here now, this afternoon you've got to go up and do, you know, play Edinburgh or something, you know. You just did it, and you weren't aware of any significance. It was just a band, you were just guys in a band. But now there's so much time's gone by, and it's kind of in the history books, you know, my kids bring home. Now I have to pinch myself and think, I'll do it. It's the best I've felt all day.
One of the,
you know, just to say, I was in the Beatles, he was in the Beatles, we are.
And it created something that everybody references. So I was in Happy Days, and for a while it became the #1 show really around the world. And there was a little moment, especially with Henry Winkler as the Fonz, Fonzie Mania. We would go and do these public appearances of these things, and there'd be 10,000 people, 15,000 people. And you know, you'd jump in the car and it'd be shaking, or they'd try to grab, one time they grabbed my hat, you know, he pulled it away from, even when I had hair, I didn't like it if they took my hat. But you know, and we would get in the limo and kind of get through the crowd and say, wow, this is kind of like, sort of like Beatlemania. It became this reference. That probably happened 3 times. It probably happened 3,000 times for these guys. So you can't really compare anything to, you know, to what they were going through. This is what I discovered working on the film.
All that madness, one of the most beautiful memories I have is when we finally made a record, and we'd all be in the same car. You know, everybody knows that. We were always in the same car, and we shared 2 rooms. We all slept together. And we'd know when the record was going to come on the radio. So at 17 minutes past 11, say, they were going to play the record, and we'd pull the car over. Wow, it was such, you know, we're on record. It was so great. You know, that's one of the huge memories for me.
Yeah, oh, it's lovely. This is from Cerys, who's in Wales, near Port Talbot. She says, Paul and Ringo, what advice would you give your younger selves?
Relax.
Just do what you did.
Relax,
It
baby.
turned out fine.
Do it, yeah. Yeah. No, you know, the thing I think that made us what we were was doing it a lot. You know, like you say, we never had a day off. Hamburg, we just worked. So I think you know, like the advice would be just relax. It's going to be okay. But we did do it a lot, you know, and I think that's what made us so tight as a band. Yeah. I mean, the bottom line for me is that we were a great little band. If I would just sort of go, well, one for the money, like, bam, and they'd go, what song is that? And they'd go, boom, 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 da, bah. Everyone would just being like, bang. We just knew each other that well, you know, and it kept going like that, you know, so that when we were doing more sophisticated records later on, we still had that point of contact, you know, we just knew what each other was talking about.
That's one of the lovely things that comes out of the film is this friendship and this thing that you all created when you were all together. It's really magical and beautiful to watch in the film. Ocean, we'd like to ask Paul and Ringo, was there anything in the documentary that you guys had forgotten about?
Well, we'll tell you tomorrow.
When you see it, of course, yeah. Ashley wants to know, Paul and Ringo, was there any specific moment in your careers where you had that moment? You kind of touched on it earlier. We went, wow, we've achieved what we wanted to achieve, or we've made it.
Yeah, you know, I think Shea Stadium was big. That was the thing, you know, that was suddenly, we'd been playing big places, suddenly this was huge. And so that was like really big. The Ed Sullivan Show, where it was, you know, I was about to go on. I got to sing yesterday on it solo, you know, because I was saying, you know, the band, the strength of the union. And suddenly, because of this song I'd done, I've got to go on and do it on my own with the Ed Sullivan String Quartet in the pit kind of thing.
Yes.
I don't know how I did it. You know, I don't know how I did it. I look at it now and it's like, I look quite relaxed. Yeah. But then it was like, oh man.
We've probably got time for maybe 1 or 2 more. This one's from Danny, who's in London, who says, Ron, Paul and Ringo, great project. I was wondering how you settled on the film title.
Mostly became important when we started screening it for audiences, for them to understand that this is a portion of the story of the Beatles. Yeah. It's not the whole epic. It's what I like about it because it kind of gives it a shape and an energy, you know. But it was very important for audiences not to expect the complete story.
You should tell them how you got to that title?
8 days a week, yeah, because I was driving out to John's house. This is the song title, and I'd been banned from driving because I'd had a speeding offence, and so I had to have a driver take me out to John's house. So I'm just saying to the driver, saying, "How you doing? You know, great. You've been working hard." He says, "Oh, 8 days a week." So I go into John's, got the title. Here we go, and we wrote it. You know.
Wow.
Well, I'm afraid that's us run out of time.
Oh,
I'm really
okay.
sorry.
Well,
So,
bye, everyone.
Thank you very much
Thank
for all
you.
your questions, and thank you to Ringo, Paul, and Ron. And go and take your friends to see the film because it's an absolutely wonderful, emotional, happy experience. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank
Peace
you.
and love.
Awesome.